Good morning, everybody. Orange J here with my first ever sort of CONVALLARIA video, and I am very excited to start diving into this game. In fact, I've been doing a ton of research, watching a ton of YouTube videos, looking at tier lists all over the internet to get ready to make you guys this video and ultimately get ready to play this game at the end of July. Now, this is a game that's been out over in Asia for quite a while, so when you're thinking about tier lists, which is what I'm trying to compile here, there's a couple things to keep in mind. There are plenty of YouTubers and websites that have launch day tier lists for this game, but there's also tier lists that exist from the Asian game, and I found a really good one over on Reddit that show you kind of how a lot of these characters age. So I wanted to say my goal for this video was to make myself a usable reference to see, as I'm rolling on the gacha in this game, am I winning or losing? Am I hitting those tier 0, tier 0.5 characters, or am I living down there in the bottom tier? And hopefully we're living in those top tiers. Now, another thing to mention about this game before we get rolling is, from everything I've watched, everything I've read, everything I've heard, if you're playing this game for that Final Fantasy Tactics experience where you want to play through the story, play tactical combat, you can just take whatever the game gives you for free and roll through it without a problem. I think for a lot of people, that might be the more fun way to play the game. Take what the gacha gods give you, take your free characters, and just roll through. But if you're interested in who the most powerful characters in the game are, what I've made here is an amalgamation of every tier list I could find on the internet with my own little twists added in. So let's get to it. Now, what you're seeing on the screen first is I just went ahead and pre-populated tiers 1, tiers 1.5, and tiers 2. These are, in my opinion, the everyone is usable tiers. Sure, tier 1 is your mid characters, tier 1.5 is just below mid, and tier 2 is the bottom tier, but all of these are useful. So if you're a Guzman fan and you want to play Guzman, play Guzman. If you want to invest your resources into these characters, go for it. I will mention a couple special things about a few of these characters, starting with, and her name is really hard to pronounce, Raya? I'm going to go with Raya. It's the girl, she drinks a lot, she has a great sword, she's in the trailer for the game. In the Asian version of the game, they got her for free as a handout. Now, she's a great sword user, AoE damage dealer, and if we get her as a handout, I have her in that tier 1.5 area. She's somebody that, according to the future look tier lists I've seen, doesn't age all that well, but an AoE damage dealer in this game early is going to be worth having, I think. So I wouldn't feel too bad about investing some points into her. I also want to mention a character like Samantha. Samantha I have in tier 1, and I actually have her at the top of tier 1. She's a healer with a lot of AoE healing, some really good buffs, and some damage options. I think somebody like Samantha would also be a great investment who could help you, especially if you have higher priority damage dealers or something like that. Somebody who could really help you clear the harder content in the game. Does she age super well? No, she's a launch unit that's a healer. Launch unit healers, by the time the game's a year old, will be outscaled by newer supports or something like that that's come out. But you can see, by Pious Prayer, Radiant Blessing, Sacred Sanctuary, she's got a lot of ways to heal your team and support your group. Another character worth mentioning in that tier 1 is Xavier. So Xavier's going to be another AoE damage dealer, and I just think AoE damage dealers are pretty cool. He's got that giant axe. He's a cool looking character. You can see his sprites on the bottom left of the screen, and this guy's whole kit is about jumping around, doing those big AoE damages. So I think he's a character worth keeping an eye on out of that tier 1. And then Garcia was another character I found information on, who is kind of the opposite of Xavier, where she's all about singling out a target and just destroying them, which, could be really good if you're fighting some really hard bosses or something like that in the game. So there are some of these information scenes like I'm showing you right here. There's more than the ones I'm showing. They exist on the Sword of CONVALLARIA official Twitter page. If you want to see more of those, go check out their Twitter, but I just kind of pick and chose the ones that I wanted to highlight for the sake of making this video. So there's my tier 1, tier 1.5, and tier 2. Again, I want to reiterate before I go on to those higher tier characters, those above mid characters that also kind of scale as the game goes on, if you like any of the characters that I already have on this list, remember, this is just my tier list and every character in this game is playable. But with that said, let's move on to tier 0.5. And the first character I'm going to start with here is Cole. Now, Cole is someone who on a lot of people's day one tier list, they had in the top tier of the game. But when I looked into like the future projection tier list, she did fall off a little bit. So I'm going to put her in tier 0.5, probably towards the top of 0.5. But she's somebody who has attack resets with like her killer instinct, right? You see it on that screen. She gains increased jump, enabling her to leap across trenches. If there are no allies nearby, her physical attack and crit rate increase. She gains act again. Here's that reset mechanic after executing an active attack on an enemy from either the side or behind and successfully defeating the target. Like, that seems really good. I see why she was such a like high ranked character at the release of this game. And the only reason I'm not putting her in tier 0 is because if I pulled Cole, and I've seen personally that like she's somebody who didn't stay in tier 0, at least according to, you know, a couple of the projections that I've seen, I just wouldn't feel like I pulled a true tier 0 character. Spoiler alert, to make tier 0 on my video, you needed to be tier 0 on launch tier lists, or at least on most launch tier lists that I've seen, and tier 0 on my like future tier list. Those are the only people I'm putting up there. Everybody else that you see is either going to be tier 0.5 or those real elite ones. Okay, so that's Cole. Let's move on to the next one. I'm going to do Beryl next. And Beryl was a really interesting character to do because on a lot of people's launch tier lists, they had Beryl down here in like 1.5. I saw her on bottom tier on some. She lived as a mid character on launch tier lists, but on all of the like future projection tier lists that I've looked at, she is either hanging out in like the second to top tier or the top tier. So for me, first of all, she's a witch looking character with a witch hat. Like, I think I kind of dig that. Now, she's a child looking character. Her sprite is really good looking, like, but not in that like waifu kind of way, just in like it looks cool kind of way. I shouldn't have to clarify that. Don't be a creep. But anyway, she's an AoE mage damage dealer that you see her kit on the screen. It looks like she has a ton of potential, right? Like, she has a move called Boom where she can't move before performing the skill and then randomly attacks enemies 5 times every hit, dealing fire and AoE damage. Like, she seems like she can really pop off. So something about the progression of this game will enable her a lot more. So if you pull Beryl and you want to play her, look, you can use any characters to pump through the early portions of a game. Just know that as the game goes on, people over on the Asian servers seem to really appreciate this character a lot. I'm going to put her into tier 0.5. Okay, the next character I want to talk about is Gloria. And Gloria is going to be our first tier 0 character. This was absolutely unanimous. Like, every tier list I found had this girl at the top of the list. Even the future tier list, once the game's been out for a while, Gloria is still up there kicking it in tier 0. And you can see her kit on the screen right here a little bit and see why. First of all, Flag of Justice, like giving your group members movement buffs. Like, if you played Final Fantasy Tactics back in the day, how OP were those characters that just had more movement than other characters? It's insane. So you could just see how that like would never fall off unless characters just come out later that have enough move speed that they wouldn't need this. I feel like she's a character that is going to be, I hesitate to say future-proof, because is any character really future-proof in a gacha game, but seems sort of future-proof. She's going to be a character that buffs up your allies, does some damage herself with Lance of Longinus, and I feel like Gloria just is one of the pull targets if you are pulling in this game early. She's the first tier 0 character on my list. Okay, the next character we're going to talk about is Nunga. And Nunga was a really hard one for me to place. I'm going to end up putting her near the top of tier 0.5. I was very, very tempted to put her into tier 0. She's a character that gains range as a fight goes on. And again, if you played like these tactical games, range is kind of OP. Now there's conditions to her range gaining, and you can read it on the screen. She does more damage the farther away she is from people. She's going to be really, really good. I also think her kit, like her sprite, looks cool. She's a crossbow wielding unit. Still, when I was looking at all of the tier lists, the future tier list had her in tier 0.5 with Beryl ranked higher than her. So really for me, I just have her pretty much even with Beryl. When I see her kit, it looks a little bit more abusable to me, but maybe even a little bit more Beryl and her both have situations where I could see them popping off and situations where I could see them not being super useful, but both look strong. And so I just kind of have them both together right there on tier 0.5. Keep in mind, the future projection tier lists have Beryl a little bit higher ranked than her, but not much. They are both in that destroyer class, and we'll go over a lot more about classes and things like that in other videos. This is my tier list reference video, but there you go. That's where I'm going to put Nunga. You can kind of see what she's meant to do on the screen. And then next, we're going to talk about Inana. And Inana was another absolute unanimous tier 0 character as what looks to be the best support character in the game. You can see her kit on the screen now. She literally has a way of giving an ally another turn. So like that is, and again, I hate to use future proof in these videos, but both of the characters I've put in tier 0 feel sort of future proof to me. Like even giving another character another action, if that scales with how good the other character is. So if a great character comes out later and you have Inana and you want to like work them into a team together, I feel like she could just scale right along with them. Her whole kit is about healing and buffing. With her summon of the Guard of the Princess, she seems like an absolutely OP character right up there along with Gloria. And in fact, if I was to rate them, I would probably say she would be the top of tier 0 with Gloria right after. But again, I have not played either of them. This is just me looking at their kit, looking at what other people have said about them, and then making myself this reference list. Now, unfortunately, for my last two characters, Dantelion and Lily Will, I didn't find a bunch of info out there. I didn't find like these cool info cards. There's some build advice and things like that out there, but nothing that I felt like I could share with you in this video. However, what I did find was where other people had them ranked, both currently and in the future. They were both at least ranked pretty high on the launch tier list. Now, I don't think they're as good as the Beryl, Nunga, and Coles. So you know what? I've actually talked myself into dropping them both down into tier 1, which is actually where like the future projection tier lists have them. They're somewhere up between like tier 0.5 and tier 1, but these I think are probably your best 5 characters in the game. And if I'm going to say that these are the best 5 characters in the game, I probably just need to do something like this. I do think Samantha is going to be really good right on launch, especially if you don't have Inana. But I think this is going to be my final list. Like this is the list I'm going to save for myself when the game comes out, aiming for these top 5 characters, right? I'm not going to lie. Beryl and Nunga are probably my favorite 2 characters, like favorite 2. Gloria, probably my favorite looking of the tier 0 characters. I don't know. Anyway, this is my first list. This is almost more of like a hype video / personal resource than a true power tier list, but it is based off of all of the information that I could find so far. So, hey, if you found this video useful or you want to just hang out on my channel for all of the Sword of CONVALLARIA content that'll especially be flowing out post-launch, you hit that subscribe button and stick around. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Peace.